Was it? Okay. I was overthinking. Okay. You know, in life, if we've lived long enough, we will face some adversities. And some of those adversities will give us these unexpected opportunities. My next guest shares her story. She was a tax preparer for almost 15 years before she co-founded her own business. Everything was good and life was thriving until she hit some tragedy. She's going to share her story, what she learned about her life personally, and how it helped her in her business right after this. What is mindset? Our mindset is based on what we believe, and anything we believe in, we put into motion. I have spent my life putting the mindset of perseverance into motion, and now I am here today to share my journey along with others whose mindsets have changed the course of their lives. Hi, I'm mindset coach Lorraine Lindsey, and I believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. So are you ready? Welcome back to another episode of The Mindsetters, where we believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. I am your host, Coach Lorraine Lindsey, a certified peak performance and mindset coach. I'm excited to share the story of a guest that is she's actually new to the show. She's not been here before, but she has an incredible story. Listen, all of us will face things, but not all of us will fall and get back up. And she certainly did, not only in her business, but in her personal life. But before I introduce this next guest, do not forget to hit the subscription button, give us a thumbs up, and send us your comments. We are continually growing, and I'm so appreciative of all of your love and support, but do not forget to subscribe. So right into the show, I want to introduce our next guest. I met her a few months ago, actually, and she shared a beautiful, amazing, and vulnerable story about her business, her life, and things that happened, and how that actually changed the trajectory of her business in a positive way. Without further ado, let me introduce this next guest and a little bit about her. Her name is Sugey Piedra.
Yes.
Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, you are.
She is the co-founder and enrolled agent for Prominent Business. It's a tax preparation business.
Yes.
And you will talk a little bit about that. But Sugey has over 20 years of tax preparation experience and provides a unique approach. She co-founded Prominence Business in 2018 with her two sisters. She's dedicated to helping clients with annual tax planning and tax saving strategies. Her mission is to have financial conversations that are sometimes not easy, but always necessary for future planning. She has two wonderful kids and, and are here to joy. She has two wonderful kids and are here enjoy outside of her work.
Yes.
So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
My intro was flubbing, but it's okay. This is what happens.
good.
It's just what happens sometimes.
We're good.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for being here. You came all the way from California.
I did.
Before we get into your journey and your story, which is a beautiful story. I mean, I love seeing women entrepreneurs who have a trade and something they're really good at and say, you know what, I'm going to turn this into a business. So I want to talk about the journey and how you got there, the inspiration, and of course, what happened that was kind of a setback for you where maybe you had thought, maybe I'm done with business and where do I go from here when you were facing those adversities. So let's go back to the beginning.
Of course.
Tax preparation. What was how did you get into taxation and stuff like that? Because that's a tough business.
It is. It's truly a passion for me. So it's difficult, but it started because of, me wanting to help my parents. And we talk about it because it's funny that, I thought that it was because my parents were immigrants. They didn't know how to read forms, and therefore it was just like a, me problem. And I asked the neighbor, a white gentleman, and I was like, hey, my parents don't know what this is. And he's like, I don't know how it goes. I'm like, but you're white. How can you not know?
Right. Interesting.
But I realized that it was an everyone problem. Taxes are complicated, and taxes, they carry the stigma of fear with the IRS and all that stuff. And so I was determined to really learn what those forms were indicating. And back when I first started, my parents would take me to the post office or to the library and pick up these forms, and I would read the booklets. And so I was just interested. When I was about 20, I did a just a really short course on them, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I could do taxes. I had been doing them already for a couple years for my myself and my parents. So I figured, why not just kind of my little side hustle kind of a thing. But the interest was still there. And I was going to school I wanted to be a paralegal, and then I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I was kind of like all over the place. But what I realized that taxes were always my easy go-to, and I could make money. So I met an accountant in one of the jobs that I had, and she's like, "You're really good at this. Like, let me show you more. Let me train you a little bit more." And so she took me under her wing and showed me stuff that I had no idea. So then I took more interest, went to school, and I got a degree in accounting. But over years, it was just something where sometimes we fight what we're meant to do. My mom says I do everything backwards and I fight everything. And but taxes came easy to me. So been doing taxes for over 20 years. But really the last 7 to 10 years, I shifted and I went more into tax planning. Just like I had a drive for doing taxes, preparing them, my drive is now educating people and showing them that we don't have to overpay. We could just pay our fair share, and using the purchasing power behind tax returns to grow wealth, to invest in real estate, to start a business. So there's a lot of things you could do with those financials that a lot of us are not aware of. So there's definitely a different perspective that I have on taxes.
And by the way, when you and I met, we were at a women's luncheon with a lot of entrepreneur women. And that's when you and I got into conversation. I'm like, wow, she adds value. This is something I want to learn about because of me and my businesses and things that I'm doing. I was like, there's a lot that I don't know. So when you and I sat down and talked, and this is what I love about people and humans, is that that's your wheelhouse, that's what you talk about. But then there's these other stories and these other layers that were behind your driving force. And even just like you said, it's like I had this thing for doing taxes, but it started with your want and desire to help your family. So take us down the road as to when you were doing tax preparation. Now you're like, I want to do tax planning. I want to do education on this and blah, blah, blah. Then what was the inspiration to go into your own business, to co-found your own business with your sisters?
So 2008, when a lot of stuff started happening with individuals losing homes and all that stuff, really made me look at taxes a little closer and the human behind them, the client, and realizing that they were going through devastating times, right? Foreclosing on homes, or you had high earning individuals, you had people that just had regular jobs, and they were all going through the same thing. So it didn't really matter how much money you made. It was more about what you did with your money that made a difference. And so I kept telling my boss at that time, like, I see something here, like, let's help these people. And it was about volume, churn them in, churn them out. Like, we just wanted, that business was about the more you did, the more we got paid. And that's kind of,
missing that human element. It was just a numbers game.
It is. But, in the tax world, that's how most tax offices are.
Right.
How many people don't say, oh, I wait for my preparer like 2 hours. There's a line there. I don't know when I'm going to get my taxes back. Like, so it's a lot of volume. Well, I wanted to do something different. And I couldn't do that under someone else's business because it was my dream, not theirs. So I, my sister Cruz and I, one day here in Vegas, actually, we were having this conversation with all of us about, our goals and dreams. And they kind of said, when are you going to start your business? And I was never ready. I always needed another license. I always needed another class or course. And she was just like, no, let's do this now. We're ready. And again, family just kind of drives us. And so she was having trouble she had her son at that time. Her job required her to travel a lot. And she wanted to be home with him. And so one day she just says, hey, I quit my job. So when are you going to, quit yours? And so I give you 30 days to quit your job. But being like the main breadwinner, it was hard,
Right.
It was difficult. And but I had the pressure. I had the passion behind it, the dream. And so I made things happen. I had to put some bills on hold, create a little bit of savings to pay some other stuff off. And I did it. We did it. We opened our office in late 2018. And
that had to have been scary.
It was really scary.
Because you're like, okay, I've done it. Now what? Now the people have to come.
Well, you know, even more than the fear was, we had this talk early on because what I was doing was I had one foot in the business, but I always knew in the back of my mind that if I failed, I could go back to my job and make good money, right? Mm-hmm. And so what that was doing was making every effort that I did was like, oh, if it doesn't work, like it's okay because I still can go make money over here. Until I made the determination, which was really quick, within a few months that I noticed I wasn't putting 100% into the business. I realized like, you know, this is like sink or swim. Like I've got to do this, you know? So I had helped other people build their businesses that I knew what to do right off the bat. It's just, it was still scary.
Isn't it interesting too? Because it's like, I even think about that when it comes to coaching. And it's so crystal clear, and there's a lot of clarity. And when I'm talking to clients that I have on what they need to do and the changes, but when you're trying to do that for self,
it's different.
We get in our own way so much. All that limiting beliefs and the self-doubt and all those things really kick in like hardcore.
Yeah.
So how was it for you getting over that obstacle, and what was your support system like during that journey?
So luckily, you know, my sisters and I were really close, and they're really quick to throw things back at me and say, hey, you said this, like, why are you now hesitating, right? And so one of those things, like you mentioned, is I would help someone else build their business. So I had the tools to build my own, but yet, like you said, I would hesitate. One of the things right away was, you know, we would have events, we would have mastermind groups, we would be part of other things where we would be able to network. So when we go through our first tax season and we're like, okay, this was a success, we did good. What are we going to do for the rest of the year? We're like, okay, so we started visiting like the chamber and finding groups that we can network with. And realizing that we were different, people kept telling us, no one's ever talked to us about taxes the way you're talking to us about them. So we started really gaining momentum, a lot of referrals. We were building really good, solid relationships, and we were getting referrals. Our phones were ringing. So it was really nice to be able to say, hey, there's something here. So once we started the business, my other sister, Brisa, joined in probably around June of the following year, because she comes in and she's like, you guys are running like a full-blown business, you know? And I'm like, well, yeah. But we need a little bit of help here and there, you know? So she started part-time helping us. But Brisa she's the organizer. She wanted things in line. Cruz and I we got this, you know, we knew what our piles and stacks of documents were. And Brisa's like, I need order, you know? So it wasn't that we were butting heads, but we started to realize the differences in our personalities, how we work in the office. And so Brisa, even though she's very organized and she wanted to set these processes, I think because she's our middle sister, she kind of didn't put effort in fighting us. She was just like, they're my older sisters. She didn't have the voice. She didn't have the voice.
Yeah.
She would just be like, okay, whatever, you know. But then a client would call and we weren't there because I was always out networking. She wouldn't be able to answer or help the client because she didn't know where his file was. She didn't know. There was no order for her. And so those are kind of things that even working with clients, we realize that a lot of entrepreneurs, they're the only ones that know the ins and outs of a client, right, a file, where things are, you know, the organization of their office. And Brisa's method was, hey, we all need to know where things are so that if you're not here, someone else can take over.
And you said something really key, because that is very, very true. And I see it, especially high achieving, entrepreneurially driven people, this is their baby.
Yeah.
I know my baby. I know what needs to be done here, and not being able to feel comfortable or even trust that if I delegate this here or there, that this world is not going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Do you know? So tell us a little bit about, because you were married at the time.
Yes.
How long had you been married at that time?
So, I don't know, no, 17 years, maybe something like that. 16 years.
So you're building this business. You have your husband, you have children, your 2 kids. Tell us, because I already know the story, obviously, but tell us what happened. Your business is booming now. The referrals are coming in. You've got your sister in who's trying to get you guys organized, but you guys are like, we got this. And it's boom, 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 boom. And then 2020, correct?
Correct. So
the infamous 2020.
The infamous 2020. So we had gotten, how can I explain this? When we have, as an entrepreneur, like my focus was the business, right? I always felt like, as the main breadwinner, I had bills to pay, I had the mortgage to make, and I had all this stuff. And yes, I was married, but it's, I guess, that controlling part of me, just like in the business, I didn't really see it until now, how controlling I really was with our finances, and with the business. It's, I didn't want anything to fail. But at that time when I was married, there was some toxicity in my marriage since the beginning. It goes back to me looking for something that, self-worth. And so I started taking classes, about, how to sell, basically. I felt like I wasn't a good salesperson. I felt like I needed help with the business. And even though the business is doing great, I felt like there was still I needed coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I went after this coach, and we started talking about a lot of things. And she kept saying that, how we run our personal life is how we run our business.
Right.
And I would disagree with her, and I would fight her so much because I knew that in my personal life, it was falling apart. It was really falling apart. There was issues since many years before. And, but, I refused to really look at it. I just kept patching it up. And the business was growing. And I remember dropping my daughter off after a terrible night. Her and her dad and I got into a big argument. And, she's like, Mom, why do you put up with it? She goes, you're such a badass at work, at your office, in your business. She goes, but then you come home and you let him treat you this way.
Wow.
That was the wow. That was a slap
the
in
gut
the
check.
face.
Yeah.
Because as a mother, you sometimes think that they don't see it, or you say you're doing it for them to keep the family together, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And so when she told me that, I realized like I wasn't being true to myself. I am a strong individual. I am capable. But for some reason, I would always cower when it would come to my marriage, my husband. And so when I started coaching, when this coach starts to, peel the layers and starts to look deep under and starts to realize, where's your self-worth? Why do you feel like your business is not doing great when it is? Why don't you give yourself credit for what you and your sister have done up to this point?
Right.
To me, it was never good enough, and it comes,
But to her point though, and it's so interesting, you said, not to interrupt you, but again, when we have those quiet cues of saying I'm not enough.
Yes.
So then nothing we do will ever be enough.
Correct.
And to the outside world, like you take you with you in all dynamics of your life. So even though it looked different on the outside, my marriage doesn't look anything like my business does.
Yeah.
Both were battling the same issue of not being enough.
Correct.
It's never going to be enough. I'm going to patch the pieces. I'm going to make sure I hold on to everything. I'm going to have all this control, and it's still never enough.
Yeah.
So emotionally, you were almost experiencing the same thing wherever you were going.
Yes. Not realizing it though.
Right.
It's once the Band-Aid or, the shield was removed from my eyes.
Right.
I look back now and I see the mistakes I made in my marriage. I see so many things different. But it's too late. Obviously, we went through a separation. After that conversation with my daughter, I made the decision to get separated. And we were separated for about a year, and we tried again, again, me trying to make things right, patch things up. And it wasn't going to work, and the more success I built on my business, I think there was more jealousy there. There was more resentment. I would stay late. I would work, and then I would go network and be out longer days. And my kids are a little older. I mean, right now my daughter's 17. and my son is 21. So they're very independent kids. So I didn't feel like I had to be home.
Did you feel also too that because the dynamics at home they weren't great, that you kind of buried yourself in your work to an extent?
My focus was my work for that reason. Because I think that when my focus was on the business, I wouldn't have to
think
face
about
and
it.
look at what's going on at home,
Yeah.
you know? But those are all things that, you know, like I said, when you hire a coach and they come in and they look at things, they're giving you an outside perspective.
Right.
And not that they're pointing the finger, but they're helping you work through so many things. And here I'm working at it as a business person. Believe me, I hired this coach to work with me on my business.
Right.
But when all this stuff is coming through, it was really my personal side that was just so toxic and falling apart and draining me in a sense, right? And so not that that's what caused all of this, it's just it brought it to light and needed to be faced. And so, you know, it's the middle of tax season. And again, what's draining me? Home, you know, the arguments at home, stuff that was going on at home. And here it's tax season and I'm working late hours. And again, it's just a lot to take.
And this is when you guys had tried to reconcile.
This is after when I tried to reconcile. So finally, we just, you know, it was like, I don't know, sometime in April of 2020. And I just said, this is like, I can't, we can't keep doing this to ourselves.
And this is in the middle of, now we're talking COVID, world's
Yes.
shutting down. It's shut down at this point because I think it's shut down like in March.
Mm-hmm.
And now did that pressure from that affect your business? And then did it as well cause a lot more stress on the relationship that was already strained?
Yeah. I think what happened at that point was there was so many unknowns, right? You're hearing all of these horrible things that possibly could happen. Because in the beginning, it was like, we're going to be shut down for 2 weeks. And then it was a month. And then, you know, and it's just like, so there was so many unknowns and it just added this pressure. Like if I'm not working or bringing in clients or, you know, how are we going to pay for the bills? Like how are we going to survive? And a lot of the times it's not just, you know, me that I was thinking about, it's my sisters. Now we're talking about their mortgage and the other sister. And it's 3 of us, you know, it's not like I can call my sister and say, hey, I can't make the mortgage payment. Help me out, you know? She's in the same business.
Right.
This was going to sink the family if this doesn't work, you know? So the pressure of all of that. And then, like I said, you know, the stuff that's going on at home was just not fun. So finally, we just decided that's it. We're filing for divorce. And I just put myself through this coaching with all my might. I felt like I was hanging on to wanting to learn more, wanting to understand, why did my marriage fail? Why was I not enough? Why do I feel unworthy?
Right.
You know?
And it's so interesting, like you said, it was like I went into coaching for my business. I had no desire to have this thing, but it took you on this pathway to open up these and essentially open up Pandora's box for you, where it's like, oh my gosh, there's all these other parts that play a role in how my business is scaling and how it's growing.
Yes.
And it has to do with the eternal flame inside of me, what's going on inside of me.
Yeah.
So I continue. I want you to continue your story.
So what would, being an accountant, what would help with the business, because I always felt not enough, right? It was looking at the numbers, right? I promote that. Everybody should be looking at their numbers. They're telling us a story. They're telling us whether our business is, you know, succeeding or not, or where we need room for improvement. So if it wasn't for me looking at those reports, I always felt like we weren't doing good. Like we could do better and we can do better and we can do better. But those reports would help me understand that we were doing good, and I really just needed to work on myself.
Right. Interesting.
I really needed to work on myself. And the coach and the program were always there helping me take these layers off, figuring out why did I feel that? Why did I put so much pressure on myself? And it all comes from when I was little, you know, growing up and being the oldest, you know, being the first child to learn English, and trying to help my parents. And so it all, those pressures come from when I was very small.
It's all learned, yeah.
And you just carry them on. And I'm grateful for that. You know, it made me who I am today, but I had to learn that at a certain point,
right.
it's okay. Like you got this, you know? and give myself credit for what I have achieved. And that's where I was not looking at those things and celebrating those little wins.
Right.
So after we got separated, and when we filed for divorce, I really went into this coaching program, and I would go away, sometimes a week at a time, and do my learnings, trying to work through myself. At that point, the eyes had shifted to me.
And did you feel free? Were you just like, okay, I did this after all these years of being married, after all this toxicity, I'm making this decision that was freeing for you, or was it scary for you? What were you feeling at the time? Because it just seemed like you went full tilt. And then, of course, something tragic happened afterwards, but you went full tilt into the coaching.
I went full tilt because at that point, I felt like I just had to. I was really upset when we were going through the divorce, because I still love this person. I will always love this person. He's the father of my kids,
right.
And so I felt that we kind of were trying to make it work all the time, but we were just not a good for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to that realization was hard. It was really hard. And the coaching helped with giving me my voice back. Enough is enough. Boundaries. And what I'll forever be grateful for the coaching is, I would always say, he did this. It's not about what he did. It's about why you accept it.
Right.
It's about why I tolerate it. And when that was shown to me, that's when I was like, no, it's me who I have to work on. It's me who has to understand that I shouldn't have to put up with anything from anybody.
Right.
And I need to set those boundaries. And once I started to learn all of that, and I felt like I became stronger. I felt like I became, like things opened up for me. And again, the business was showing it. The business is growing. The business is doing what it's supposed to do. It's just, we kept seeing
because you had that
success.
confidence, and I am enough, and I have my voice, and now you're putting that into your business practice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was really an amazing year, until, of course, the personal side. COVID, what played a part in all of this, but the divorce was final in November 29th, I believe, somewhere around there. And my ex-husband passed away shortly after, 17 days after our divorce. And wow, that was a big shock.
Because it's like, we have these things, we had this toxicity, we also had a family.
Yeah.
There's good, there's bad, we have our children. And I'm finally getting my voice back, and I'm finally doing these things, and I'm making this decision to do what I feel is the best thing for me in my life at this point. And then you finalize your divorce, and 2 weeks later, he dies.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly.
Yes, for sure.
And what was that for you? Because that, again, kind of circling back to what your coach was saying, is like, you take you with you into your business or whatever. It's part of who you are. And so that was a big setback for you, obviously, emotionally, but that also created a setback in your business.
Yes. So, when going through the divorce and all of that, it's silly, you see it all the time, but you're in part of you celebrating, right? You see women have like divorce parties and all this stuff, right? So that's me in a sense, right? I'm wanting to celebrate the fact that I'm going into this new chapter of my life. The business is doing great. I'm loving what I'm learning about myself. I'm loving this person that I'm becoming, right? This freedom that I'm starting to feel, that I can come home and it's peace. There's peace at home. That I don't feel this pressure of, am I going to argue with my husband today, and all that stuff that was, toxic before. Wanting to celebrate all of that. But when he passes, instead of celebrating, I feel guilt. This tremendous amount of guilt. So yes, the business is the last thing I want to do. I want to be there for the kids. I'm facing my own demons in a sense. regretting a lot, feeling like I put too much attention to what I wanted to be and how I wanted to, be a better person. And I kind of left him behind in a sense. And so dealing with that guilt was very difficult. The business was, I just told my sisters, I'm like, I can't, I'm checking out. Do what you guys want. Close it. I at this point, I just don't want to be at the office. I am blessed to have the sisters that I do, the family that I do, the support system that I do. They all stepped in. They did what they had to do to continue to run the business, notified the clients who were very understanding. Clients become your friends and your family as well.
Right.
And they notified who they had to notify to let them know, hey, this is going on. And it's the end of the year, holidays, but year-end, meetings for me with the clients, and there's deadlines. All this stuff is having to be missed, or someone's having else to do it. And that was that was a good thing that came out of all this tragedy, was that I stepped away and I allowed someone else to take charge, which I didn't know I was controlling. And that was another layer that was peeled.
Well, this is, again, circling back to what I said in the beginning, was when we have adversities and hardships, sometimes there's opportunity that comes from that. Because as we talked about, you were building this business, then you had your sister, and you're getting your voice back. Your sister didn't have her voice, but through all of these different things, she was able to step in and say, the organization thing that I was talking about, let me step in and help do that. And when you were able to kind of come above water from everything you were going through, you were able to see, like, you know what? It's tragic, but I've learned to let go.
Yes.
So what was that like for you, and how long did it take you to come to that realization? And when were you able to finally pull yourself together, say, I'm ready to go back into this business? So
as many of us women probably are, when we have to step up, we just do. And that's what I did, right? After his services, I just put on my shoes and said, I'm ready to work. Everyone's like, you need to grieve. Oh, I'm fine. That's my favorite word, right? I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to be there. I needed to do what I had to do, but I felt like a zombie. I felt like I was there, but I really wasn't there. And all eyes on me. They were always watching to see when she's going to break, when is this going to happen? But I just shoved all the emotion that I was feeling just deep down inside.
Because that's what you knew to do.
Because I just knew what
that was autopilot for you. Yeah. Your whole narrative and your whole pattern was to pour yourself into work.
Yes.
And to care. And that was your way. That was your escape. So it became like your heroin, if you will, became your addiction.
Yes.
Right.
So there's about a 2-month period, somewhere around there, where I was checked out a little bit, waiting for his services and all that to happen. That's when really Brisa stepped into her role and started creating processes to hand out, tasks to the new people that we were going to hire. Because all of a sudden we were going to bring in new individuals, because she actually had work to hand out. Before that, all the tasks were in my head. So she's like, I can't get all those. How do I hire somebody if I don't even know what to train them? Because it's all in your head. So that time period allowed her to go through my desk, figure everything out, go through my emails, all of that good stuff. So when I come back, I all of a sudden don't have to check my emails anymore. That's that was her job. She organized them, and now it's somebody else's job.
How did it feel, though? Was it a little unnerving at first? Like, what has happened here? Like, where's all my emails? Was it because it's a shift?
It is a shift. And at first, I don't want to say I was mad, but in a sense, you feel violated. You feel like, why are you making it seem like I can't handle this? Right? Again,
that not enough narrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you start to switch it, and I start to, give them credit for what they're doing. I know that that they still do. I mean, we all look out for each other, but they knew that I was going through something, and at some point I was going to face it, right? And so they're helping me take over all of these little tasks that I would do before. I mean, the office is so completely different from what it was back then, and, but it's a blessing. I mean, it's great. The office works great now. But it's sad that it had to take this for me, this, this tragedy for me to realize how controlling I was, even with the office. But right after tax season, they're like, take some time off. The hard part is over. Take some time off to heal or to grieve or do what you got to do.
Right.
I kept saying I was fine. I mean, I had moved on. I had a new boyfriend. I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I'm great. Until I talked to my coach. And when she was just like, you're not okay. Like, you're not ready to face it. So call me when you're ready to face it. And a lot of it was, anger. I was very angry. I was very angry at the situation. I was very angry at what was happening, what was being said, what the kids were going through. That made me very angry because you're mama bear.
Right.
So when I see them suffer, I get angry. So there was a lot of anger I had to deal with. But it took a little bit for me to really face all of those emotions. But what really allowed me to do so was the fact that the office was under control.
Wow.
I get to leave at 5. I get to take Fridays off. I get to say, you know what, today I'm not going to go in the office because I'm just not feeling it.
Well, how did you know to really make that switch? Because your antidote, so to speak, was to bury yourself in work. And now your sister had put these things into place where it wasn't required of you because it was all set up systematically. How was that for you to come to the realization of saying, I'm going to take advantage of the time to do my healing? How did you know to give yourself that grace when that was not what you knew all these years?
Yeah, it was really hard. It still is. I kept, by 2 different coaches that I've had over the years, over the time, they told me I was looking for the chaos. I was looking for the chaos in my current relationship. Because I'm like, gosh, this guy's great. He understands me.
You're waiting for the ball to drop though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could talk to him about my feelings. I can tell him, what I'm going through and, and all this, he's very supportive about the business and, all this stuff. And something's wrong. Like something has to be wrong. And the coach is like, you're looking for chaos where there isn't any. So, obviously not in those words, they kind of.
No, but it's well said though. I mean, it definitely summarizes it because I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And in my own personal journey, having to learn to be okay with peace in my life and not being comfortable in that peace and not think that something terrible is going to happen because I was used to things always happening. So I think that's so relatable to a lot of people, things that we don't realize when we fall into these patterns, when we start to look for that familiar feeling, even if it's toxic.
Yes. And earlier this year, when I was talking through some of the stuff that was going on at the office with the business coach, I kept saying the same thing. I'm like, tax season's going great. We're bringing in the revenue that we should be, but yet I go home at 5. Like, I feel like there's something wrong. I feel like I'm missing something. Mm-hmm. And this is a totally different coach from the personal coach. And she tells me the same thing. She's like, you're looking for chaos. You're used to your office being the pressure of you saying, I got to do this and I'm going to do that. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to go do this. And then the emails come in and they distract you and clients call. She goes, you're used to such a chaotic office because it's all you, that now that everything's organized and everyone has tasks and they're not all yours, that you're, again, waiting for something to go wrong. You're waiting for something to happen. And she goes, enjoy it. Focus on you.
Do you feel like you're doing that now? And like obviously when you're used to doing something for so long, it gets so hardwired. But what is it that you're doing now? Because I know people can totally relate to what you're saying, self included. So what are you and what have you done to say, I can have this space, I can have this peace, I do not have to have the chaos? What is it for you that you do to make that a thing that feels comfortable?
So one of the exercises that we did was about us. What would I have done, or what are the things I wanted to do that I couldn't do when I was so chaotic, right? And one of them was like, oh, well, if I had time, I would take care of my health. I would go to the gym, or I would go for a walk or whatever, read a book, you know? And so this coach tells me, she goes, okay, well, let's do those things now because you have time to do those things now. Focus on you and your health. And I shifted. I did. I'm still occupied because I think that's what I was looking for, to be occupied, right? I felt like I'm not the type to sit on the couch and just kind of watch TV. That was a little training that I had to do to be able to really sit on a couch and watch a series or something, right? But focus on what I could do for myself now, which I'm not used to. I'm used to helping others. I'm used to doing things for everyone else, but for myself, there was really never enough time.
Learning to pour into yourself, learning to fill your own cup so you can be enough, right?
Yeah.
Because the not feeling enough is an empty feeling.
Yes.
And so it's hard when you don't feel like you're enough and you're looking for that cup to be filled by outside external things. That's just innate. That's just the nature of us being human. But really learning to say, I'm the empty cup because I'm not pouring into myself.
Yes.
And it's hard. It's really, really hard to do, especially when you're a nurturer and someone who is used to taking care of everyone.
People feel like it would be some sort of freedom, but in the beginning it was like, you don't need me? You know, like, wait, why don't you need me? Like, I wanted to be needed. I wanted people to call me, for help.
Right.
And you have to work through it. You don't have to be part of everything if it's working. Making sure everyone has their tasks.
That's really good. You don't have to be part of everything.
You don't.
If it's working.
It took a little while, and it's still a process.
Right.
I still go through it. But I have to find ways that I could stay distracted on working on, like I said, myself. What can I do? So I've revamped the business. I focus on doing other types of networking. I come up with more ideas, but the time that I have allows me to now, which is nice. It allows me to focus on that. But not too long ago, dealing with the guilt of, when the kids were growing up, I would work late hours. It was like, check out for tax season. I'll see you at the end of April, because it's tax season and you won't see me. And dealing with the guilt that now I leave at 5, but when they were little, I wasn't home.
Oh, so we're back to I see what you mean by the guilt.
So it's reworking through all of that. Did my marriage fail because I wasn't there, And I have to work through these exercises to remind myself, no, there were other things wrong with the marriage. And even if I would have been home at 5, that wouldn't have made things different, But those emotions, those thoughts flutter in my head, and I have to work through them.
And that's so real and that's so raw. So for the people that are out there listening, who can relate so much to your story, and I feel like I'm relating to every little thing that I'm like clinging to all your words, because it really touches me, because I can so relate to so much of what you're sharing. But what would you say for people out there as we conclude about checking in with self, pouring into self, the importance of being comfortable in the decisions you make regardless of the outcomes? What would you say to people out there who are in that space right now where they're struggling?
I wish that I would have done it sooner, for sure, but things happen for a reason. I count my blessings every day. It's tragic what happened in my life. I see it with the kids and, everything. But taking the time to pour into yourself, you don't need a tragedy like this to happen.
Right.
Successful entrepreneurs, individuals that just have that drive, tend to be a little controlling. And we just need to come to the realization that what's the goal? For me, it was that the client be happy, right? That I satisfied the client, that the client had what they needed. The client is happy right now. They're even happier because they're getting what they need quicker than when I was trying to do it, because I had 101 things to do before I got to that task, and now they're getting responses of emails a lot sooner. So maybe it's not how I would have responded, but the client is happy at the end of the day. So if the client is happy, the goal is met. And those are the things that I had to shift in my mind and say, if the client is happy, the goal is met, and I can let go.
Yeah, it's like here's the vision for you, was making sure the client's happy. What is the vision for your life? And what can you delegate to surrender to that vision, you know? And it's hard. It's hard. And letting go of the control is hard, but trusting yourself. And I think the more you pour into self, the more you learn to trust yourself. And so that way, when you're making those decisions to delegate and to give people the things and releasing some of that control, whether it's through work or your personal life, I'm telling you, I had this whole control thing down to a T. And every time I felt like I had control, everything seemed out of control.
Yes.
And I realized it was a false sense of security. And just letting go now has been incredibly liberating for me. So
I think to an extent, sometimes I do it too much. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that.
You're like on the far spectrum of it. Yeah.
Hire someone to do that. Hire someone to do this. And
I like my time now. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just liberating. And I also realized that what we call my $1 million thoughts come to me when I'm at peace. When I give myself the time to really focus on whatever's going on through my mind, I come up with these better ideas.
That is so true. That's such a good point.
Because there's not so much clutter.
It gives you your creative space to expand. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, listen, I love having you here. I appreciate you coming here and sharing your journey on a personal note, because I mean, you're so astute and I love the way you talk. We did a little webinar the other day, and you're a wealth of information. You are completely super valuable in what you give to people as far as teaching entrepreneurs and business people how to really manage taxing and building their wealth. And I love that you are passionate about not just taxing, but teaching people to plan and have wealth. And that you have such a heart for it. And it's felt every time we talk.
Yeah,
thank you for sharing. And tell everybody here where they can find you. If they have a business, whether it be small or big, because some people have this misconception that they have to have this big, huge monster business in order to have someone really help them put their business plans in motion. So where can they reach you and what can they expect from you?
Yes, of course. So I am federally licensed, so I work with clients, across the United States. And the business, if you have a business and you're paying taxes, that's where somebody like me comes in. It's tax planning. With my current clients, we're already working on 2023, like 2022 preparation. That's just wrapping it up. We want to focus on 2023 so we can figure out what we can do during the current year to save on taxes and put strategies together. So you can find me. Our website is prominencebusiness.com. And our Instagram is prominence.services.
And I will put those links in the bio for this show. So once again, thank you so much for coming out here to talk and grace us with your presence. And thank you all so much again for watching another episode of The Mindsetters. And once again, do not forget to hit the subscription button. And until next time, ciao.